George loved technology. As a teenager, he spent hours tinkering with computers. He built websites, explored coding languages, and dreamed of a future in IT. College was the natural next step. George excelled in his computer science courses. His passion was clear. His professors saw his potential. He graduated with honors, ready to take on the world. George's family was ecstatic about his new job. They threw a party to celebrate. His mother, however, had something more than congratulations in mind. She pulled George aside, her face serious. "George," she said, "promise me one thing." George leaned in, curious about his mother's sudden gravity. "Promise me you'll save," she continued, "from your very first paycheck." George was a little surprised. He'd been expecting words of encouragement, not financial advice. But his mother wasn't finished. "Open a separate bank account," she insisted, "just for savings. Don't touch it unless it's an emergency." George nodded slowly, beginning to understand the weight of her words. "Keep building it up," his mother urged, "until the day you retire." It wasn't a complicated plan, it wasn't fancy, but it was sound advice born from years of experience and a mother's love. George, deeply respecting his mother's wisdom, promised her he would follow her guidance. The first day at his new job was a whirlwind. There were introductions to colleagues, tours of the office, and a mountain of paperwork. But the most exciting moment came at the end of the week. George received his first paycheck. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was his. He had earned it. A wave of pride washed over him. As he held the paycheck in his hands, he remembered his mother's words, "Open a separate bank account, just for savings." He knew she was right. He'd seen firsthand how unexpected expenses could derail even the best-laid plans. His mother had always emphasized the importance of being prepared. Without hesitation, George headed to the bank. He opened a new savings account, specifically dedicated to long-term savings. It felt good to be taking control of his financial future. It was a small step, but it felt significant. He was on his way to building a safety net, just like his mother had advised. The initial deposit into his savings account wasn't much. 20% of his first paycheck was a start. He set up an automatic transfer. Every time he got paid, 20% moved into his savings. Living on 80% required adjustments. George tracked his expenses. Small, everyday expenses added up. He started bringing his lunch to work. He explored cheaper entertainment options. He even started biking to work. These small changes added up over time. George's friends were initially amused by his newfound frugality. "Come on, George," they'd say, "live a little." New gadgets were released almost every week. The pressure to keep up was real, but then he'd remember his promise to his mother. He'd remind himself of his long-term goals. He knew true financial freedom came from having the discipline to delay gratification. Years passed. George settled into his routine. He excelled at his job. His salary grew with each passing year. Checking his savings account balance excited him. Small transfers accumulated into a substantial sum. They represented security, freedom, and peace of mind. George's friends continued to tease him about his frugal lifestyle. They'd invite him on extravagant vacations or to expensive restaurants, but he'd politely decline. They couldn't understand why he wouldn't splurge once in a while, especially with his growing income. But George wasn't missing out. In fact, he was discovering a different kind of freedom. He found joy in simple pleasures. A bike ride along the beach, a homemade meal shared with friends, the satisfaction of fixing something himself instead of hiring a professional. He realized that true happiness wasn't tied to material possessions or keeping up with the Joneses. It was about living within his means, making conscious choices, and finding contentment in what he had. He learned to appreciate the value of a dollar earned and the power of saying no to instant gratification. 5 years flew by. George celebrated his 30th birthday with a quiet sense of accomplishment. He had achieved a level of financial stability that many his age could only dream of. His savings account balance reached 6 figures, a testament to his discipline, his mother's guidance, and the power of compound interest. He hadn't inherited a fortune, won the lottery, or stumbled upon some get-rich-quick scheme. His success was the result of consistent effort, small sacrifices, and a long-term vision. He had embraced the concept of delayed gratification, choosing to invest in his future self rather than indulging in fleeting pleasures. Looking back, George was incredibly grateful for his mother's advice. It had not only put him on the path to financial security, but it also taught him valuable life lessons about discipline, patience, and the importance of setting goals. He knew his journey wasn't over, but he was excited to see what the future held, armed with the financial freedom he'd worked so hard to achieve. The six-figure milestone in his savings account wasn't just a number for George, it was a symbol of transformation. It represented a shift in his mindset, a newfound sense of confidence and security. He no longer felt the pressure to chase every paycheck or worry about unexpected expenses derailing his plans. He had reached a point where money, while still important, no longer dictated his choices or ruled his life. He had the freedom to pursue opportunities that aligned with his passions, rather than simply chasing the highest paycheck. This newfound financial stability also impacted his relationships. He was able to support his family and friends in ways he hadn't been able to before. He could offer a helping hand without hesitation, knowing he had the resources to do so. The joy he felt in being able to give back was far greater than any temporary satisfaction he might have gotten from frivolous spending. Word spread among George's colleagues about his financial savvy. At first, they dismissed it as luck or a high salary, but as they got to know him better, they realized there was more to it than that. They saw his modest lifestyle, his lack of interest in flashy possessions, and his unwavering commitment to saving. Curious, they started asking him for advice. They wanted to know his secret. George, always happy to share his knowledge, emphasized the simplicity of his approach. It's not about making a fortune overnight, he'd explain. It's about small, consistent actions over time. It's about discipline and delayed gratification. He encouraged them to start small, to automate their savings, and to find joy in living below their means. He stressed that financial freedom wasn't about deprivation. It was about making conscious choices that aligned with their values and long-term goals. Section 3. The ripple effect. George's story resonated with his colleagues. Inspired by his example, some started tracking their expenses, others set up automatic savings plans, and a few even adopted his frugal habits. They witnessed firsthand how small changes, when implemented consistently, could make a significant difference. The company break room, once buzzing with conversations about the latest gadgets and weekend getaways, now occasionally hosted discussions about budgeting tips and investment strategies. George's influence had sparked a ripple effect, shifting the focus from mindless consumption to mindful financial management. Even George's friends, who had initially teased him about his frugal ways, began to see the wisdom in his approach. They witnessed the peace of mind he exuded, the freedom he had to pursue his passions, and the generosity he showed towards others. They realized that true wealth wasn't measured by the size of your bank account, but by the richness of your life experiences and the positive impact you have on the world around you. Section 1. The allure of keeping up. George's journey wasn't always easy. He lived in a world obsessed with instant gratification. Social media bombarded him with images of people living seemingly perfect lives, filled with expensive vacations, designer clothes, and the latest gadgets. It was easy to get caught up in the comparison game, to feel the pressure to keep up with the Joneses. His colleagues, most of whom hadn't embraced his savings philosophy, would often flaunt their new acquisitions. They'd talk about their weekend trips to exotic destinations or show off their latest tech toys. There were times when George felt a pang of envy, a fleeting desire to experience that kind of instant gratification. He'd question his choices, wondering if he was sacrificing too much in the pursuit of a distant future. Maybe he should loosen the reins a bit, treat himself to something nice just this once. These thoughts would swirl in his mind, tempting him to stray from his path. But George had a secret weapon against the allure of keeping up with the Joneses. He had discovered the power of contentment. He found joy in the simple things in life: a good book, a walk in nature, a heartfelt conversation with a loved one. He realized that happiness wasn't tied to material possessions or external validation. It was an inside job, cultivated through gratitude, mindfulness, and a focus on experiences rather than things. He learned to appreciate the value of a dollar earned and the satisfaction of living within his means. He found creative ways to enjoy life without breaking the bank. He explored free concerts in the park, discovered the joy of cooking at home, and organized potluck dinners with friends instead of going to expensive restaurants. There were times when George's friends and colleagues, perhaps feeling a twinge of guilt over their own spending habits, would try to tempt him. "Come on, George, just this once," they'd say, dangling the promise of a fun night out or a weekend getaway. "You work too hard, you deserve to treat yourself." While George appreciated their concern, he knew that giving in even once could jeopardize his long-term goals. He'd politely decline, explaining that he had other plans, which wasn't a lie. He had a date with his financial freedom, and that was more important than any fleeting indulgence. He knew that saying yes to every temptation would come at a price, the price of financial security, the price of peace of mind, the price of reaching his full potential. He'd rather endure a few moments of FOMO, fear of missing out, than live with the regret of derailing his dreams. George's journey to financial success was never about striking it rich quickly. It was about the slow and steady climb, fueled by discipline and consistency. His story wasn't about flashy investments, but about saving diligently and living within his means. In a world obsessed with instant gratification, George proved that slow and steady wins the race. His story resonated because it was attainable. George's story is an inspiration, a testament to the power of simple yet profound principles. It encourages us to take control of our financial destinies, to break free from the shackles of debt and financial insecurity, and to create a future where money is no longer a source of stress, but a tool to build the lives we envision. So how can we be more like George? It starts with a single step, however small. Set up that automatic savings plan. Track your expenses and identify areas where you can cut back. Find joy in simple pleasures and resist the urge to chase every fleeting desire. Remember, financial freedom isn't about deprivation, it's about empowerment. It's about having the resources to pursue your passions, support your loved ones, and make a positive impact on the world around you. It's about living life on your terms, free from the weight of financial worry. Be like George. Start your journey today. The future you will thank you for it.